Today on the Business Builders podcast, we are talking with entrepreneur and sales professional Michael Phillips in the second interview of our Effective Networking series. And our focus is the benefits of being targeted with your networking. Well, welcome to the Business Builders podcast. I am your only host today. My name is Brenton Gowland, and Ron, our other co-host, is off holidaying in Kangaroo Island. So we hope Ron has a great time while he's away. But today, we're going to continue on with our Effective Networking series. Last year, the last 5 or so episodes, we did a series on effective networking and how to go about improving how you network. And then we interviewed a gentleman by the name of Paul Kitching. And his purpose for networking was to build relationships at volume. Now, what we want to do is we want to interview a couple of other people at the start of this year to give some perspective on different methods of networking so that you can see how different purposes for networking equal different approaches. So when you go through the Effective Networking series in our past episodes from last year, I think the last 6 it was, you'll see that different purposes end up with different approaches. So anyway, on that, I'm really excited because today we've got a young entrepreneur with us. His name is Michael Phillips. I've known Michael for probably about 5, 6 years, I think now. So I'll give you a bit of a background on Michael. As I said, he's an entrepreneur and an enterprise technology salesperson. And he founded at a young age, about the age of 22, a sales enablement startup which had users at Google, Square, Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, and was ultimately acquired by an organization called the Sales Developers in San Francisco. Michael then led the sales strategy and execution for an Australian software development company and currently manages the South Australian enterprise customers for a global cybersecurity company. Michael is passionate about technology and how it can help executives and businesses achieve their goals. And the reason I wanted to get Michael on the show is because I've watched how Michael's approached networking over the past 5 or 6 years that I've known him, and I've been really impressed with his approach and how he builds relationships in a targeted fashion and is very effective at then helping the right people acquire the right support from the businesses he works with. So with that, Michael, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, mate. Great to be here.
So I thought I've given you a little bit of a bio. Do you want to just give us a little bit of your background in your own words so that our listeners can get a bit of a view for who you are?
Sure. Happy to do that. Look, I guess to understand me, you have to dial it right back to the teenage years, and I was very hell-bent on football. And I had actually, when I was about 15 or 16, I got my front teeth knocked out and I had to take a season off because if I put a mouth guard in, it would bring the teeth back out. So I had all this competitive energy that I didn't know what to do with.
I got to stop you there.
Yeah, sure.
Your teeth look amazing right now. Are they real?
Thank you. They're real. I picked it up off the ground, went to the dentist. He chucked it back in.
Oh, wow. Look him up on LinkedIn. He's a good looking man. He's got great teeth. Sorry to cut you off.
Thank you, mate. I'm blushing now. So I had this competitive energy that I didn't really know what to do with. And I started learning about the business world just over time. After school, studied a business and innovation degree at Adelaide Uni, ended up winning an entrepreneur challenge through the Adelaide Uni, which came with a cash prize. I dropped out at about 19, pursued that. And the startups were then, the rest is history. So look, I guess that is one side of my life, which I'm quite proud of and happy things worked out well. But look, from the personal standpoint as well, got a long-term partner. We've got a place together. I'm very close with my family and friends. And I think that is something that has influenced the way I do business and network as well, because I enjoy meeting really cool people, learning about them, and I guess having a mutual relationship with them that goes both ways.
Great. And we had Valentine's Day yesterday. So did you get up to anything interesting with your partner? What'd you do for her?
Oh, she actually had to work late. So I cooked a Thai red curry, which I'm actually very proud of because I'm not the most savvy chef in the world. But it turned out all right. I got some brownie points.
Wow, that's good. Well, I'm very pleased. So obviously we're here to talk about networking. And as I said, I've seen you over the years progress and been really impressed. So look, and I'm guessing it might have come from your teenage years, but at some point in all of our careers or in all of our work lives, most of us realize the value of networking at some point. So when did this happen for you? And how did you come to understand the importance of networking?
Sure. There's probably two moments in my life when I reflect back on understanding the value of it. One was during the time I was creating the tech startup for the first time. I had to obviously fund that somehow. And when I was about 18 or 19, I figured that at the Grange Golf Club, which I had some family and friends that were playing there and members, that I would start up a car wash because I felt like all these rich people were playing golf. They had their cars there sitting there for 4 or 5 hours. So one of my early businesses that were non-tech related was that. And the reason I got to meet with the general manager was because I knew a number of the people there. So in my mind, I started working out, look, the access to the right people often come through trusted relationships through a mutual person. And then I guess the other moment in my mind that I reflect on when I realized just how important a network is when that first startup actually failed. So the one you talked about was my second one. But the first one, I was 19, 20. I didn't have much of a network. And I realized that, getting to achieve the goals that I needed to do, meet the people I needed to meet, it didn't actually happen because I was so early on in the journey. And it was very hard to work my way to get that access. So there was a really positive experience with networking and one that did well. And then one where I felt like it was sort of the trigger moment for me that I knew I had to improve on it as well.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great story. And I love the fact that you started a car washing business because a lot of entrepreneurs that I've met have started all sorts of crazy little businesses when they were younger, and you're no different. You've done exactly the same thing. How many businesses have you actually started?
Oh, that one, there's maybe a handful, but the one that are the most legitimate ones were the tech startups. That one was obviously a great little business for me at the time. But yeah, the ones that sort of got the legitimacy were the ones that had a solution behind it.
Yeah. So that second business you started, to be able to sell that's a pretty good success rate, 1 out of 2.
Hey, I'll take 50% odds. That's not too bad.
Yeah,
but look, that one was one that was a little bit unexpected. That is it contributes to, I guess, the overall networking message where I was putting out some articles onto the internet to drive some traffic to that startup. And I was really surprised with who's actually reading it, other companies around the world. And then that's how it actually turned into an acquisition where a company started using it, liked it, wanted to bring it in-house, and then made an offer. So I guess all of these sorts of things really add up to the fact that you just never know who's out there that may be watching, listening, reading, meeting you. You can only connect the dots looking backwards.
And I'm assuming with that startup, was it just you or was there some other people involved?
So the second one was just me, which is one of the learnings I took from the first one where I felt like there was maybe too many chefs in the kitchen. And for the second time round, I was a little bit leaner with it, kept the control, kept the vision, and just brought in those contractors to build as and when needed. And I felt like that one was able to scale a bit better over time.
Excellent. And so you then had to go and sell that yourself, didn't you?
Correct.
Was that your first experience at selling?
Well, it actually wasn't, because I had a couple of things prior to that, which was actually the reason that I created that startup. So I had, I guess, a couple of sales consulting roles, a couple of engagements, and I started to notice that all the onboarding was done either paper-based or in a very messy way. And me being someone that likes to work from a framework, I actually realized, well, yeah, I can make a Google Doc, but my actual ideal would be something that helps train me over time. Hence, I created a web application that could actually help you navigate a sales call and actually interject with a prompt to actually help someone that was training up. So that was sort of the idea and the concept at that time. And that's where inside salespeople from those companies that you mentioned sort of came across it, started using it, and it seemed to fill a gap in the market. So yeah, it was a great learning experience, and I still take a lot of learnings from that to this day.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Really good to hear. And it's good to hear about what someone who is entrepreneurial has done in terms of starting businesses, how they've gone about it, the thinking behind it, and the fact that that idea came out as something that you were doing anyway. And it's an interesting story. Now, just moving on, in our series in effective networking that we've done on the podcast, we talk about the fact that there's disciplines involved that help us become effective networkers. And the first discipline is defining your purpose. So can you talk with us? Because I know that you've been out and doing networking for years now. Can you talk with us about what you've discovered or what your purpose for networking is and why you chose that purpose and how it helps you?
Sure. I think there are multiple purposes of why you should do something or why you could do something. And I think when people typically think of networking, they really think, hey, I'm going to an event where I'm going to meet other people. that's the typical thought process. People often go there with the intention to meet a bunch of potential customers. And look, that's okay if that is your purpose. But I think for me personally, it's about being targeted. It's about being, I guess, the person that gives the value rather than looks to take the value immediately. And so, for example, when I was at an earlier role or within business, you would go to an event to meet people when you don't know many people, and that's completely fine. But I think as I've progressed and now working with very targeted customers within South Australia, you really go to these types of events to meet nice people. I mean, I think we all want to do business with people that we like and that like us.
Yep.
But also, to make sure that whoever I'm meeting, I can actually add something of value to them, because I guess that's fundamentally what a relationship is. It's both getting a mutual value of some kind, whether that is just purely personal or whether it's from a business perspective as well. So I guess that's my purpose for going and, to events, networking in general. I like to meet cool people, hear their stories, but also potentially see what the future might hold for us.
Because what you've been talking about is events with networking. Do you see networking as being events or broader than that?
I see it broader than that. I guess that's the typical definition of it. But I see the network as something, you have a group of people within your life that might come and go as time goes on. But reality is they'll stick with you through that lifetime. And I think that the digital platforms of today help enable a network that someone you might have met last week, you can stay in touch, and that can continue whether or not you actually catch up in real life or not.
So what I'm hearing is that your purpose is beyond your job, right, for networking.
Absolutely.
Your purpose is to build relationships that last for time, but to meet good people that you like doing work with.
Spot on.
Okay, cool. So a while back, I interviewed you because I was looking at doing a book on networking. And when you were talking about your methodology, how you go about networking, you named it. What did you call it?
Networking synergy.
You did. And I thought that was really cool. A cool sounding methodology for a network. There you go, folks. You want to come up with a name for your networking methodology? There's a great example. So can you talk us through networking synergy, how you came up with that and how it helps you achieve your purpose of going out and building relationships that are quality?
Sure. I guess it is a bit of a buzzword, but synergy is usually used to define something where two or more groups or people come together for a greater sum than an individual could achieve. So I guess when you think of it like that, it really is about meeting people for me where there is that exchange of value. Now, I don't go into events or to meet people usually with that agenda right up front, because the reality is with what I do, I actually probably can't help you more often not than can. It's a very select sort of group.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm looking to do is to find or meet people that either, yes, I can, or maybe they know someone that I can as well. So I think it really is just going in without expectations, and having that sort of lack of expectations, I think leads to more genuine relationships, because I'm not here just to take something. I'm here actually to meet someone, see how they're going with their lives, what's their goals. And my favorite thing to do is actually to learn about someone, and maybe there's someone in my network existing that I can introduce to them. It's funny. I talk about things with my customers that extend into our personal lives, and being able to talk about that. I'm actually really good friends with some of my customers now, and we've been to each other's houses, been to events. I think it's a special thing when you're able to do that. So the synergy for me is beyond just work. It's actually, how can our lives have greater value
Together.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the synergy part, actually
Absolutely.
going out, meeting people and working out who you can run with and build long-term relationships with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good. And you know what? It's really interesting. I was listening to a podcast on LinkedIn the other day about LinkedIn, and they were saying these particular people who were speaking have followers of 150,000. And I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of work. And they said the key thing for them was dropping all the business speak and speaking about their lives. And then they found people that they could connect with on LinkedIn and laugh with and build friendships with and so forth. And that's a very interesting thing, because I think in a sense, a lot of us are trained to be businessy when we're on LinkedIn, and I don't think it should be like Facebook, but it kind of reminds me of what you were saying, that you find people that you align with. And if you don't show who you really are, if you put up that veneer like we all do, like we're a professional business person, and yes, we are professional business people. We're speaking to business builders here. A business builder is someone who wants to change themselves in order that their businesses can grow. So they want to keep progressing, because if we sit still, we don't go anywhere. And sometimes that comes with putting on a mask. And what I'm hearing from you is it's finding authentic relationships. What I heard from that podcast the other day is it's about being your authentic self on platforms like LinkedIn, which really starts to attract that network synergy that you're talking about.
Definitely. We're all people at the end of the day. And I think sometimes people, regardless of if they're at an event or online, maybe see other people as their roles, not as a person. And I think having that genuineness, if that's a word, to, I guess, see someone for who they actually are and learn about them, you'll find out that, hey, yes, they might be an executive at a business or whatever, but they've got their own lives. They've got family, stresses, goals of their own. And this is a moment in time. And so my goal is to, even myself, is to learn about them broader than that, broader than the role that they're in, because you never know what the world might have in store for us both. I've met customers and partners and whatnot that I would actually consider going into business with in 10, 15 years time, because that's how good of an operator they are. And I think potentially not everyone looks at the long-term value each way and the personable attributes that someone has like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got a mate who is a high-level professional, and he left a high-level role and took 6 months sabbatical. And he took great delight when he met people out in, business cycles. Because like we'll go to the city and there's a certain bar that we'll go to and a lot of business people go to. And how you said people see themselves as a role. What do you reckon the first question is people ask when they come along?
What are you doing now?
Correct. And so he would often say, I'm gainfully unemployed. And most people wouldn't know what to do. And he took delight with that because he just wanted to play, because he's this particular person who likes to find out, drill into someone and get beneath the surface. And watching that happen a number of times, I thought was really interesting, because people got stumped. They didn't know where to go from. I'm gainfully unemployed. What do you mean? Well, I'm not working for anyone. I'm actually, when they eventually realized he was taking 6 months off from what he previously did, their whole attitudes changed. But boy, oh boy, people don't know what to do when there's not a clear, tangible thing you can go, this person fits in this bucket.
Well, I think we're going philosophical now, but I actually think even myself, I battled with this, is that our egos are wrapped up in what we do, not who we are. So a lot of the time when we're meeting someone for the first time or catching up with someone we haven't seen in a while, you kind of see them as maybe not the depth that we should. And so even, for example, when my first startup failed, it was a really tough time because my ego was actually wrapped up within that as the success of my life, the value I was placing on my life. Whereas that needs to be detached. And when you can be a person without something that you're doing, I think that's where you can get really good results from what you actually want out of life as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking 6 months off. I actually think I'm an advocate. I'm a bit of a workaholic, but I'm an advocate now for a bit more balance in life. And work isn't the ultimate thing all the time. It's very important, but not the be all and end all.
I think it was that Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think the last couple of chapters were very poignant in the fact that they were talking about, okay, you've just spent your whole life building these business relationships. Well, what about your wife? What about your partner? What about this? What about that? Did you build that relationship? Because if you haven't done that, you're not hearing the ethos of this book. And I thought, for a book that was written, I think 50s, 60s, I read that and I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. But to your point, so how do we bring that, what you're talking about, that authenticity into networking?
I think it's about when you go to these events, what is your intention? What is your purpose? Is your purpose to throw 100 business cards around? Or is it to, because I think that's very surface level, very shallow. Is your intention more so to meet cool people, find out more about them? Then from there, maybe something will happen, maybe not. Maybe they know someone who you could benefit from and you could provide benefit to. I think it's really about defining, I guess, going in with the right intentions. And everyone is going to have a different purpose. I'm not saying that my way is the ultimate way or anything like that, but I've just felt like there is some real deep connections that last a long time when you approach it for not what can I get right now. It's about what can I give? How can I help? And then if something happens, great. If not, hey, I've just been my authentic self, and potentially it goes back to the way I've been brought up, but it's always to try and help where we can.
Now, let me throw in a curveball. You're paid to go out networking. How does that marry up with meeting your quotas for sales?
Well, it's a great point because so you get paid for the deals you bring in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously measured. A salesperson is very easy to measure their effectiveness. There's a number. You either meet it or you don't.
Yeah, and I've been in businesses where the salespeople get bombarded all the time, which I understand why they go to an event and throw out cards because they're trying to satisfy everyone that's in the background barking at them to make more sales.
That's right. But I think less is more. Now, depending on the business you're in, you might be in the small to medium business sort of, that might be your target where there are heaps and heaps of customers that you could help. But I still genuinely think that you need to be finding a problem, not just selling a product, because there is no solution without a problem. So if you're not taking the time to really understand someone, they might not even have that problem that you can solve. So what's the point of talking about the solution, right? Now, I think, yes, we get paid to close a deal or to win a deal, but I don't really look at it typically like that. I look at it as in, if I meet someone or know someone that is experiencing that problem and I can provide the solution to take them from their current state to their goal state and they're happy with that and our company can provide that, then that is the ultimate goal. It's not finding someone, selling them something they don't need and then moving on. It's actually more of a strategic partnership long term. And that may be also because of the nature of what, the business that I'm in now, which it very much is multiple hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. And that sort of requires a relationship and trust from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective.
Yeah, it's a bit different selling multi-million-dollar deals to $20,000 deals.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, fundamentally, we're all still people, but there is going to be an added complexity the bigger the deal, the bigger the organization, all that sort of stuff.
So is there a plan to what you do? Because a lot of what you're saying at the moment is go out and see what happens organically. Do you plan your activities? How do you plan your activities? And how does that help you put that networking synergy methodology into action?
Sure. So I guess the message today is probably being targeted, right? So there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many people in your target market. If your intention is to grow your business, right? It's about, hey, where are my customers going? So there's particular industry events, there's particular trade shows, there's particular places they hang out online. It's about using empathy to be in their shoes around what's going to give them the maximum value and what can give you the maximum value. So I think there's 1,000,001 events that we could be going to, but the reality is you need to pick and choose according to what's going to provide both you and them the right bang for buck, because they're busy. And a lot of customers want to work with us, but we have to be selective in making sure we actually are solving a problem. So I guess the how-to is to be targeted, really understand the customer and really understand the ecosystem that you're working in. I really enjoy coming along to the business builder events, not to find customers, but to meet other people that are in business. And you get to meet a really diverse range of people, learn different things. For me, it's a personal development reason why I come along to them. So I think it's really about just being that good person to understand more broader than just what you're offering.
Okay. And interesting, on the business builder events, we actually tell people not to sell. We actually, particularly if there's people who come along who've been business development people, we're like, no, hold the bus, stop, get to know people because the work will come. It's like you were saying, you get to know people and 15 years down the track. I've got clients at the moment, just started working with a client that I met probably 7 years ago, and all I've ever done is just caught up with them and gone, wow, what you're making is amazing, this incredible technology. Now it's like, we need you, come and help. And there's no banter, no back. It's just because we already know each other. It's like, we know that we're a good fit. So that's very interesting. When it comes to going to events though, when it comes to doing what you do, even if it's online, I would imagine though that you have some methods and some principles and some strategies you put in play, because to find out if someone's worthwhile, you've got to open them up and get them talking in a comfortable manner. You got to have them feeling relaxed so that, Michael, I will talk to you. I want to talk to you about this. Oh, you're an interesting guy. So what are your strategies? How do you go about navigating a room or interacting online such that you can start opening up those opportunities to create relationships that match with your methodology?
Sure. I guess, so for example, let's say you're going to an event and there's a couple hundred people there doing your homework beforehand. And I think you and Ron have touched on this before.
Yep.
But it's really about, hey, I need to understand who's going to be there, why they would be there. So what purpose are they going for? And then, picking a handful of people that you would like to meet because you think that there might be mutual value there, or synergy, as we called it.
Yep.
So really it's about doing that sort of background work up front and before you get there. From there, I mean, it's no secret. It's like dating. You just go and talk to people. Like, you open it up. It's not in a pushy way. It's not in a weird, desperate way. I guess you just treat them as a person. And, I like to have a coffee with someone or have a drink, or maybe they're sitting on the same table. Just learn about each other. And I think with that approach, it's not really overly scientific like an entire sales process or something like that. It's not a framework. It's really just about time is limited. They might have some problems that they want to solve. Maybe they've got some goals. Maybe there's some potential synergy there, for lack of a better word. So I think the only way to find that out, though, is through conversation. And I think it's about using events and things like that as an initial introduction to a broader or in-depth meeting later on. Because obviously in a room full of 100 people or 1,000 people, there's a lot going on. It's got to be a sort of a lighthearted approach. And I guess that's something that I've always taken as an approach to the events we've been to together and the ones I have in more broader industry events. And for me, it's just about, like I said, having a good time, because people have, if you've had a good experience,
they remember you.
Absolutely. And I want to remember them. I want to have a laugh with them. I'm quite a jovial guy. I like to not take myself too seriously. And I think, look, that's all part and parcel. We're all human beings at the end of the day, and we all want to be entertained. So I think it's just about having that ability to connect at a human level before business is even talked about or conducted.
Yeah, 100%. So what I'm really hearing from you is you want to go into an event knowing who you want to talk to before you go, if you can. If you can,
ideally. Yeah. At least know the industry or the persona that is going to be there if you don't know the specific people.
Yeah, because then you can find them by going into the room, asking people where they are. There's methods of getting to people, but you kind of know the kind of person you want to talk to before you go to the event.
Absolutely. And you can tailor your message to the type of people that are going to be there as well. If it's a technology conference, people are probably going to be more geared up on the actual tech. If it's an executive conference, it's going to be business outcomes and business challenges. And being able to navigate that and understand the different layers and the different levels about not only what you do, what they do, and what the industry does, that sort of information obviously helps contribute to a conversation because you're more relevant.
Yep. So let's talk about follow-up, right? You've been to an event, you've met someone. How important is follow-up? What do you do? How do you go about it?
Oh, I think it's one of the most important things, because we've all ran into a friend at the pub and said, we'll catch up for drinks, and nothing ends up happening. So I think being able to, and that's why I'd say pick a few, because if you've got 50 cards or, you've connected with 50 people, maybe that starts getting to the impersonal level where it's not really genuine. But if you've got a handful, hey, that's manageable. That's actually a time efficient way of doing things. And you can actually get to a depth that you probably wouldn't have had with 50 people. And that's why when you mention someone's got 150,000 followers or connections or whatever it was, fantastic for them. But are they getting to depending on what they want to do, are they getting to that level of depth where trust and relationship is there?
Yeah, I think these people were selling products at scale, but they weren't going about it as going, hey, buy my product. So we're going about it by
being authentic.
Well, a bit like what you were saying, the networking synergy, they were kind of sifting through finding people who aligned with what they wanted, and then selling those products or services became a no-brainer because the people would just do what I said earlier with, I see the time is right. I know you well enough. I want your product. So that's their strategy. So it's like we were talking about purpose. Their purpose, from what I understood from what I was listening to, was to gather people, as many as they could, so that they could scale up their sales online.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Look, I think the follow-up is also very important because, like you just touched on, timing is often everything, right? And you might have a problem that we can solve, but if that's not number one on the priority list, it's probably not getting the attention, and that's okay. Look, I have priorities in my life, you've got priorities in your life, and businesses have different levels of priorities. And I think it's just about making that initial connection, but then that regular cadence to make sure that, hey, here's the relationship that you can trust me and I can trust you. And if something happens, great. If not, that's okay. But whenever you need it at that point in future, I'll be here to chat.
And that makes for a much more relaxed relationship. So let's just talk about that for a minute. You've got people in your network, you followed them up, you're picking quality over quantity. What do you do with them once they're in your network? Obviously, you keep up with them. You can't do that pub thing of, hey, let's catch up, and you never catch up, because then you become someone that's unreliable or not really interested in a friendship. What do you do? Because I'm assuming that you've got a fairly big network, Michael. How do you keep that network alive?
I do my absolute best with the time that we've got. So one of the things that I've done that has served me really well is just having a regular cadence in the calendar with them. So if it really is someone that I've connected really well with, I'll have a note in my calendar every 3 months, give them a call, catch up for a coffee, catch up for a lunch, see how they're going. And that's something that is without expectation, but it gives you an opportunity to get to know someone at a deeper level. And I think that that's been something that's been really good and well received from other people. Now, obviously, you can't do that with everyone, but picking and choosing the people that you align with, get on really well with, and that there's potential, whether it's at business level or personal level, that's been something that's been great. And just those phone calls, people have said, "Oh, thanks for continually checking in. It's been good to chat," because life gets away from us as well.
It does.
And that's the scary thing. We're already halfway through February of 2023. I'm barely getting out of 2021. So yeah, we've lost a few years to COVID.
Yeah, we have. So what I'm hearing is you actually calendar out for what period of time in advance do you calendar out for?
Look, if it's someone I'm just meeting, it's probably a longer time.
Yeah.
We're not going to go straight into a weekly catch up or something like that. But I think if it's someone that you have got that momentum with, I've said, "Hey, do you want to put a breakfast in the calendar for once a month or once every 2 months?"
Yep.
At that point, it's there. We can adjust as we go. If he's away or she's away or I'm away, whatever, we'll change it to the next one. But I think having that ability to just have it there as an expectation that, hey, we'll catch up every once in a while. It's actually been great because I get to learn more about them. They get to learn more about us. And it's just kept that dialogue going.
Yep. So roughly how many people in your network?
Very hard to say. The people I do that with, probably 25 to 30.
Okay, that's cool.
But how do you define a network?
Difficult question, but you've got to map it out. The way I would do it is I would map, you got your 25 to 30 that are the key relationships. Then you got your others where you might catch up 3 monthly, 6 monthly. And then you've got your others where it might be yearly. And then you've got your others that you just see at events. So you might invite them to come along. But I think you can manage those kind of larger networks if you have a structure to what you're doing. It was just kind of what I was getting at with how far out do you calendar.
I think it's a tough one where you're right. You really have to map that out and almost tier them. But
yeah,
it's like, I don't want to just, force people to be on a spreadsheet, for lack of a better term, or in a database. It's more about that quality. Yes, I've got a lot of contact details, but the way I define a really good relationship, even with a customer, is if you called them out the blue, would they answer? Just to talk about anything. That's great. Right? So something that's been instilled in me with my manager at Fortinet, who's been a great mentor and friend to me as well, is the KLT score. So know, like, and trust, right? And I'm sure people have heard of this before.
Oh, I talk about know, like, trust a lot.
There you
I call it a continuum.
There you go. So, we would sit down and say, let's say you're about to win a piece of work potentially with a customer. Really, on the scale of 1 to 5 of the know, like, trust, what do you think it is? And if it's really anything less than a 4, that's not great, because if this is the level of solutions that I was talking about, and you're going to be a strategic partner to them, you really have to crank that up, because that means they don't know enough about us personally, and we don't know enough about them. And that's the best relationships are ones that actually happen outside of that sphere of work and business. It's actually knowing them. The best
is it that they spill outside of work because they've become great relationships, or do they exist outside of work?
I think vice versa.
Yeah.
So I've had great relationships be born out of potential and existing customers just as much as I've had it the other way around. And I think this is why it's very difficult to define, a exact process or methodology, because it's human behavior. It's so dynamic.
Okay. So look, I've seen you as a standout networker for a while, so I'm really hearing that you really focus on quality. You find those people. I would imagine that over time, some people go out of that inner circle and some people move into it depending on where you're at and what you're doing and so forth. But everyone has an improvement cycle. So I'd imagine you've improved a bunch since you were doing that 22-year-old startup that you were working on and that you amazingly sold. So how do you go about reviewing and improving your performance? Is it just a time thing based on what you're saying organically, or are there things you do to learn and grow?
Always there to learn and grow. I think that's the life experience, is you got to get better. Otherwise you're just getting worse by staying stagnant. I think, yes, there is the element to what I do professionally, which is, look, at the end of the day, you're a salesperson. You have to bring in deals. So yes, you can measure it from that perspective, but I do like to measure it from the sense of that KLT score and making sure we're having fun along the way, because look, business can get dry at times. And that's where I was saying you need to do it with people that you actually enjoy. Even for you, you could probably work with thousands of customers if you wanted. So why did you pick the clients that you have? Because you probably enjoy them. Like you said, you've known some for 7 years or longer.
And values that I respect, because I've come across and I've worked for people just because I felt obligated to, and I've been like, wow, that was the worst experience ever.
Exactly.
But when you work with people that you value their values, your synergy word that you used earlier, it's a much better result because you can be proud of it. You've helped them. They're improving, but they appreciate it as well.
That's right. So I will often have, I guess for lack of a better term, an open book sort of relationship with them where I say, look, hey, here's your goals that I know and here's my goals. How can we find a spot where we're both winning?
Yeah, that's great.
And that's something that you can really only do when that trust has been fostered, because as a business, hey, we have to make money for multiple reasons, but the main one is so we can stay in business for you. You guys have to make money and you guys want a great price. So how do we find that sort of middle ground where we're both winning? And how can we ensure that you're supported? Because look, there's no one perfect solution and sometimes things go wrong. How can we ensure that those risks are mitigated for you? And that is relationships. Customers, I think that customers want to have a great relationship with me, because when they call me with a problem, they know I'll pick up and they know that I'll push for them internally and that I'll make stuff happen. And I think that is the purpose of having that two-way relationship where they can trust me, I can trust them.
Yeah, that's great. Boy, I got to tell you, I really like that KLT score that you were talking about. So how do you actually define what that is? Like, how do you choose what that score is? Because I'm assuming the customer doesn't mark anywhere. This is where I'm at in the know, like, trust continuum. How do you identify where you're at?
I think it's a pretty rudimentary ability to score. So 0, you've never met them, you don't know them, they don't like you. 5 is your best mates and
they trust you.
They trust you. If you call, they'll pick up, vice versa. So anywhere in between that, you can imagine what the different sort of steps are. Maybe early on, you've met them a couple times, things seem to be going good, maybe a 2. As that progresses, I think it's really about how much do you know about them personally? Because I actually really like the fact that I know some of my customers, friends, maybe their family. There was a great event that we ran. We actually sponsored the PGA Tour late last year, which was based in Queensland. And I got to not only take about 12 of our customers, their partners got to come along as well. And I brought my partner. And so that weekend, that 3 days together, we didn't talk about business. We got to know each other as people. Now, not every business can do that, but the principles are the same. Basically, they get to know my life, I get to know theirs. And that was where I consider a really strong relationship where they know I'm not going to screw them over and vice versa. So I think that there's no exact numerical score you can give a relationship at a point in time, but I think the goal is to progress those relationships to a point where there is that mutual trust and relationship.
Golf's done well for you, hasn't it?
I don't mind a hit every now and then.
Well, back to your first job.
Well, that's right. Come a 360. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Look, great conversation, Michael. I think we got to wrap up now because we've been going quite a while. But on the Business Builders podcast, we're really committed to giving people advice and tips and practical things that they can do right now to improve their performance. So if you were going to give 3 tips to our listeners today about how we can improve the most dramatically with our networking efforts, what would they be?
I think one is you have to know not only your purpose, but your customers, your friends, your network's purpose. Now, you're not going to be able to do that for 5,000 people, but for those people that you are either actively seeking or working with, really understand them. 2, be genuine at all times and be kind, because ultimately you have to help. That's the reality of our world. And it feels good. I personally feel good when I help someone. Yeah, and great. That's an important thing.
I actually remember that about you. I remember one of the first times we met, you said to me, "How can I help you?" That was right off the get-go. I think that was like the second time we had coffee, and that I'm talking 6 years ago.
There you go.
In La Mocha on Peel Street, I think it was.
That's the one.
Yeah. There's a plug for a coffee shop in Adelaide. If you're listening in America or Europe, it's not going to help you unless you come to Adelaide. But if you come to Adelaide, La Mocha's great.
Good coffee. And then 3, I think it is having that ability to follow up on your word. So if you say, I will give you a call, It sounds simple, but a lot of people don't do it. So I think just being true to your word, having great intentions, and then having that cadence to follow up, that will solve 99% of the problems. And it'll also solve 99% of the challenging parts of, I guess, networking in general. But being genuine allows you to create those real relationships and friendships.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what I'm hearing is really know the people that are in your network, get to know them, spend time, quality time, really understanding who they are, be authentic and kind in your interactions with them, and then be true to your word. There are your 3 bits of advice.
Those are the 3.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure and a really good conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And if you're listening here today, we will be back in a couple of weeks. We've got one more interview in the networking series, and then we'll be into marketing. We hope Ron's having a great time in Kangaroo Island. So Ron, if you're listening, have fun. But we will see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you for joining us on the Business Builders Podcast.